Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL. How's everyone doing? Today is AFC North Day. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Let's dig into these three draft classes for the Brownies, the Bengals, and the Ravens. Before we do, as impartially as I possibly can, if I were to rank the four AFC North draft classes strictly on the players they brought in, like I'm not counting Deshaun Watson as part of the deal or they picked up a future pick or whatever, I would put the Steelers first comfortably. I would put the Browns last by a wide margin, although they didn't have a lot of draft capital. We'll get to them first. The other two I would have as above average classes, but I like Cincinnati's a little bit more than Baltimore's. All right, we're going to kick it off here with the Brownies. They didn't pick until 54. Still part of the Deshaun Watson trade. Maybe right up there with Russell Wilson as one of the worst trades in the history of the league. Their first pick was Michael Hall from Ohio State. They want a rotation amongst their defensive line, particularly their defensive tackles, and he fits that well. He is not an every down player. He's undersized. He can get swallowed up by double teams and things like that. But he's an upfield penetrating defensive tackle out of Ohio State that's probably going to play around 285 pounds. Quickness, makes plays in the backfield, good stunter, things like that, movement player, lateral agility, can chase down ball carriers on the outside, but not a power player. I would assume his early role will be on third downs, and he should be decent at it. I like him. I don't love him. I really like their next pick. That's Zach Zinter. He's a guard out of Michigan. Funny enough, a guard from Michigan, D tackle from Ohio State, obvious rivals. Would have been one of the first pure guards drafted, if not number one, but he is injured. And much like the Ravens did last year, I think they project him as a starter a year from now. Well, why is that important? Well, first off, he's not going to help them this year. If so, it'll be late, and he's behind a pair of really good guards with Cleveland. But because of this crazy Watson contract they have, this pick tells me one of our two guards isn't going to be here much longer because they're too expensive. You know, they have a really good pairing of guards, but you can't keep doing that whenever you're paying Watson $65 million or whatever it is. Next pick is Jamari Thrash, wide receiver out of Louisville. And I'm not going to dig in heavy these seventh rounders, but Thrash is a solid player. At best, he'll be a 3, maybe more of a 4. But I found it interesting. This year they took Thrash at wide receiver. Last year, their first pick was Tillman, a wide receiver. The year before that, they took Bell in the third round. The year before that, they took Schwartz in the third round. All wide receivers. 4 years in a row taking a reasonably high mid-round pick wide receiver. And their top three guys are Cooper, Moore, and Judy, all of whom they had to trade for. So haven't been getting anything out of these draftable wide receivers. I like Nathaniel Watson, linebacker out of Mississippi State. I also really like Miles Harden, a corner out of South Dakota. I don't know why Harden went this late. I thought he was more of a 4 or 5. So good value picks there. And they also got Jawan Briggs, a defensive tackle out of Cincinnati that'll probably struggle to make the team, to be quite honest with you. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NBA, and NHL playoffs. All the latest stats, news, scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to get into the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, the Baltimore Birdies made 9 picks, 2 of which were 7th rounders, 2 of which were 4th rounders. And this is a theme. It wasn't just the Steelers, but a lot of these playoff teams had to be thrilled with what fell to them after 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12. And I didn't think Nate Wiggins, the corner from Clemson, would last till 30. He's skinny. He really made a lot of business decisions last year in terms of trying to stay healthy and not sticking his nose in against the run. And he's not really a Raven in that capacity. I mean, he's not a tough guy first. I mean, he's kind of an outside, super fast, lean, man-to-man corner that's a better player than the 30th pick overall. But in terms of Ravens' toughness traits, I don't really see it with Wiggins or their second pick, Roger Rosengarten. He was the tackle on the other side of the University of Washington's line, so he played the right side, Penix's blind side. He's a good athlete, but he's also more of a finesse player. Right tackle's a big problem for the Ravens. I think Rosengarten will start early. I just don't know that he has the strength to deal with that, and that means TJ Watt and also Myles Garrett and others. Speaking of edge pass rushers, they took Penn State's Idissa Isaac at the 93rd pick. They needed him. I mean, Ajabo and Owe have not exactly been home run hits, but they both have ability, so another guy there makes sense. Clowney's gone. So I like Isaac. I think that's a solid pick there. Devontae Walker was a receiver they took in the 4th round, one of 2 fourth-round picks. Really struggled catching the ball at the Senior Bowl, and that's a bit of a problem for him. That was a bad week for him. But he's a downfield go ball guy. I mean, he's a good player. I mean, to get him at the 113th pick overall, solid value. Real solid value on the pick at 130, and that's TJ Tampa. And I've heard some rumblings just recently. They look at him maybe as a safety, which is interesting to me. He was an outside the numbers corner, a lot of man coverage, didn't run great. Not super physical for safety, but they do ask their defensive backs to do a lot of interesting things. So that's intriguing to me. I thought that was their best value pick and the one I liked the most. They took a running back, Rasheem Ali, out of Marshall. He's kind of well known as a great pass protector, but he's injured. I don't know when he'll play. And Devin Leary from Kentucky, I thought was a really interesting player here too. He's the kind of guy I wouldn't mind the Steelers taking at the end. Just work on him for a year, see where he's at. Works out better for Baltimore. He's not a Lamar Jackson clone, but he's not a bad athlete. And then Nick Samak, center out of Michigan State, backup at best. I mean, at best, especially with Linderbaum in the mix. But their O-line to me still is a little worrisome, to be honest. Speaking of O-line, Cincinnati leads off with Amarius Mims, a guy we've talked about a ton. I think this is a really good landing spot for Mims. Obviously, Cincinnati's offensive tackles are the biggest you've ever seen, and that's still the case with Mims. Maybe that's why they took him over Fatanu, perhaps. I mean, they're much different body types, and they have 2 in place, so they can bring him along slow. I'm sure he'll come out as 6th offensive lineman. Maybe he's a starting guard. But a real trend with this Bengal draft is all their offensive picks are sort of boom or bust, high variance. If they hit big. But their defensive picks are solid. They're not real risky, not a lot of downside, pretty solid picks. And I don't know if that was done on purpose or not, but I found it interesting. And they got one of my favorite players in this draft, Chris Jenkins, with the 49th pick overall. You guys will lose your mind with me actually saying this, but if Jenkins and Frazier would have been both on the board at 51, and remember Jenkins went 49, that would have been an extremely difficult decision for me. So I know I'm very happy with Frazier, but I've been just as happy with Jenkins. I think he's a really good player. And they're going to play against each other a bunch in the trenches. He's got a lot of upside. They lost DJ Reader. I thought defensive tackle was their number 1 need and got a good one in the 2nd round. This is, talk about variance, is Jermaine Burton, wide receiver, Bama. Was also at Georgia. He's also been at numerous schools going back to high schools because he wears on people and he has character issues. This is an old school Bengals type pick. And I'm not exaggerating. If he was clean off the field, I think he sneaks in the back of round 1. I mean, he's that good. He is explosive. He's a downfield guy. He is the immediate T. Higgins replacement. All those third guys that they've had, now that Boyd's gone too, are all out of the mix. He'll go right past all of them. I guess he has a tight relationship with TJ Houshmandzadeh. But by all accounts, I mean, I'm not stepping on a line here. There's a lot of knuckleheadedness here. And who knows how he keeps that afloat. McKinley Jackson, defensive tackle from A&M. Again, D tackle was a big need. Jackson is more nosy-ish than Jenkins, which is more reader-ish. And I thought he was way overdrafted. I mean, at the end of the third round, because he's just a hold the point, tough as could be dude, crazy background, really tough. I mean, like everyone's afraid of him. He's that type of guy in the locker room, but doesn't affect the passing game. And I think he was overdrafted. He's fine. He probably won't miss. I really, again, go back to the offense, high variance. Eric All, tight end, Iowa. Tight end, Iowa is the thing that should stick out of here. They hit like crazy. Laporta and Hawkinson and Kittle and Fant, et cetera, et cetera. And he's very talented. He has not finished either of the last 2 years. He's got a massive injury history, but they drafted 2 tight ends. They brought in some tight ends. I assume that they're going to try to get that position more involved. And if all can stay healthy, he's going to be a problem for the Steelers for a while. Another solid defensive pick is a defensive back we've talked about a fair amount, Josh Newton from TCU. They're going to move Dax Hill, first-round pick during the Pickett year, to full-time corner. I think Newton will also be a outside/slot defensive back, probably the 4 for them for now. Probably projects to be a 3 before long. And then the rest of their picks really didn't move the needle for me all that much, but they took 2 guys out of the Mississippi, Cedric Johnson, a defensive end, and Juan Anthony, a defensive back. They took a second tight end out of Arizona, Tanner McLaughlin. And then the last pick I thought was kind of interesting, at 237 overall, is Matt Lee, center, Miami. Now, I'm not here to keep telling you this was a deep center draft. If the Steelers didn't get their top 3, it would have been okay. But this guy usually would be like a 5th-round pick to me, and he ends up being a 7th-round center. Moves really well, agile, needs to get stronger. Maybe he ends up being something for the Bengals here in the next couple years. But nice pick, just a name to keep an eye on. So again, I would rank the draft classes in the division. Steelers, Bengals, Ravens, they're close. Again, Bengals are high variance on offense, and the Browns are a distant 4th, but sort of no fault of their own. They didn't have premium picks, but hey, that's the bed that they made, and they're sleeping in it. So, alrighty. I got some other Steelers stuff tomorrow. That'll be the last one of the week. Also need to, one of my projects in the meantime, I need to do a better job digging into the Steelers' undrafted free agent pool, just to get a little bit of a snapshot on each of those dudes. And there's a couple people in that class that some folks are excited about. See if I agree. All right, take care. Over and out.